Viewer mail segment. Then we'll bring together some political pros to talk about the new Rudy Giuliani, the old Hillary Clinton, the new Hillary Clinton, and more. But first, let's go back to the newsroom where Louis Dodley has a check of the latest news and the weather. Stay with us.
As well as the expected highs.
Thank you very much, Louis. Welcome back to Inside City Hall. It's Thursday, time to open our mailbox to hear what you have to say. Mary Ellen from Staten Island caught our debate the other night between Congress member Sue Kelly and Gregory Meeks. The caller wishes the politicians would stick to the issues rather than partisan politics.
I want to know where each candidate stands on the issue.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Rick Lazio is sprinting out of the box. In less than a week, he has logged more miles on the campaign trail than Rudy Giuliani had in months. But when he hopped on the subway, it didn't turn out that he knew the cost of a Metro card. Can the Lazio train stay on track? Joining me tonight to answer that question and more, public relations guru George Arzt, political consultant Joseph Mercurio, who advises Democrats and Republicans, Democratic consultant Lincoln Mitchell, and Democratic consultant Jerry Skurnick. Welcome, everyone. Mr. Mercurio, the Zogby poll shows that the gap between Lazio and Hillary Clinton has narrowed to the point that they're statistically tied. Are you astounded by today's news?
I'm only surprised that it happened as quickly as it did. I thought it was going to take at least 3 weeks or 4 weeks before that happened. Her negatives are so high going into this poll that it was unlikely for her to be able to grow very rapidly or very much. And he had a very good rollout. He did all the talk shows. He did a lot of appearances. He was on television, local television throughout the state from his stops. He did a very good job of establishing himself, fleshing himself out, and her vote is also young and heavily minority, and without Giuliani in the race, she's going to have a great deal of trouble with turnout, so she's probably actually not doing as well as it seems.
Just give me a little bit of the surprise factor first. Lincoln Mitchell, how big a deal is it that he's been able to erase this gap in such a short period of time when the guy came out of nowhere and people presumably don't know who he is?
I think to a great extent what this poll tells us is something we already knew, which is whether it was Clinton versus Giuliani or Clinton versus Lazio, it's going to be a very close race. That's what this poll tells us. I think it happened very quickly, but I think this week is like a convention bump for Lazio. He had a week of dominating the headlines. He got a good send-off from Rudy, frankly. And I think the Clinton campaign was off on their first attack. I don't think linking Republicans to Gingrich is the way to go anymore. It didn't really work in '96 or '98. Whether the degree to which that's accurate when you're talking about Lazio notwithstanding, there are other messages on which a candidate like Hillary Clinton should be running.
What do you mean that he got a good send-off from Rudy?
I think that Rudy got out in time. He didn't drag it on longer than he had to, and he didn't really hog the media spotlight after he gave that very striking speech on Friday afternoon.
Jerry Skurnick, what does this mean?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure the poll has changed much. The previous Zogby poll had Hillary about the same number, and the difference between Lazio then and now are the undecided votes, which went from Rudy to undecided and now went to Lazio. Like Joe, I'm not surprised it happened. I thought it would happen a little later. But unlike Joe, I think what he talks about, the turnout, is why the poll is inaccurate. Zogby is famous and notorious, depending on your perspective, for weighting the poll based on who he thinks is going to vote. And in the past, he's always weighted it toward Republicans are going to vote more often. And the last two elections, that hasn't happened. That's why he was, embarrassed, frankly, 2 years ago. And the night before the election, he had D'Amato winning. I mean, he was 8 points.
D'Amato race.
Yeah, he was 10 points off 8 hours before the election. So,
George Arzt, what do you think? How significant is this?
I have a great deal of skepticism about polls, having been burned by them when I was a reporter, and we did our own polls for the Post. But my feeling is that it's not astounding that the race tightened up this soon. Yes, but I would like to see corroborating polls to see really how this stacks up.
Okay, Lincoln Mitchell, you're talking about a candidate in Hillary Rodham Clinton who can't seem to get above 50% in any poll, and whom polls show voters have such a strong dislike of, or so many voters have such a strong dislike of, that 40% of voters say they'd vote for anyone over her. There's no way they'd vote for her under any circumstance. So you're a Democratic consultant. If you were her consultant, what would you tell her to do to overcome this, you know, significant problem?
I think the first thing I would tell her to do is to reorient the campaign, which I think they're doing, you know, that you're not running against Giuliani anymore. It's a different kind of campaign. You're running against Lazio. And what that means, the first thing, one of the things that Lazio did right out of the box is he got upstate, you said in your introduction. Hillary had been really chipping away upstate, where in the Giuliani race there was an interesting suburban, Protestant, Midwestern type versus ethnic loud guy from the city. Lazio's Italian-American, but that particular piece is gone. What she needs to do is message development. You've got to identify that 15% of the electorate, of which you need to win 60 to 70%, currently the undecideds, and you've got to get a message that speaks to them very loudly, very directly. She certainly has the resources to do it. You've got to figure out what that is, and I think she's been dancing around that so far, but hasn't done that successfully.
Is he right that she is making a mistake by trying to tag Rick Lazio as an extremist?
Yes, I don't think that. I think it's rather simplistic, and tagging him with Newt Gingrich, people are scratching their heads. Who was Newt Gingrich again? What was the contract for America? I just don't think it resonates very strongly. Nor do I think that his message of she's an extreme left-winger that resonates very well
You
either.
saw Bruce Blakeman harp on the extremist tag every chance he got.
Not going to work. It
Not
just
gonna
doesn't
work.
resonate.
What do you
She's
think?
first lady.
The Quinnipiac poll, which was done while Rudy was still in the race, asked people whether they thought Hillary was too liberal, too conservative, or just about right. And 60% said her politics was just about right. So the issue isn't, Hillary's problem isn't her positions, it's what some voters perceive of her personality.
I think Lazio isn't going to make a lot of the mistakes of the past. He isn't going to do the upstate, downstate fight. I don't think he's going to do throughout the campaign the extreme liberal campaign that you saw happening to an extent here. I think the fly in the ointment for him ultimately is going to be the same thing that was the devastating fact for Al D'Amato. It could be the choice issue. They could twist him into pretzels and make his positions seem more extreme than they actually are. He's in fact a moderate, a pro-choice candidate. He's very different than a lot of the culture conservative Republicans. But they could twist him into pretzels on the choice issue. If it sticks, he could lose women in the suburbs and some
There were
women
too
in
many
the city.
caveats in his record.
Too many
on
caveats,
choice.
too many buts,
Right.
pro-choice butt.
Right, and I think that it looks like a record full of holes.
Okay, very interesting. Why don't we take a break? We will have a lot more with our political experts in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to Inside City Hall. We're talking about the Senate race and about Rick Lazio's strong start. I think we all agree he did have a strong start. What happens now, Lincoln Mitchell? Does Rick Lazio stay on the attack against Hillary Clinton? Is that what you would advise him to do? Just get out there every day as he seems to have done and just attack, attack, attack?
I wouldn't. I mean, as Joe pointed out, she starts out with very high negatives. You're not going to get them much higher. And she starts out with about, I don't know what the percentage is, but a substantial chunk of the electorate that's going to be with her no matter what. If I were Lazio, I would start getting out a little bit about who I am, other than that I'm a New Yorker, other than that I'm suburban, other than that I have a pretty wife and two cute kids. His supporters are saying this guy has a record of accomplishment. In the last 8 years, I haven't seen Rick Lazio's name attached to a lot of legislation coming out of Washington. He doesn't have a record, I think, comparable to what Chuck Schumer did in a longer service in the House before running for Senate. He's got to put some flesh on that record.
He doesn't have a lot of money just now yet. What does he do to get his message out or his image?
The money thing is going to be very interesting because she's got easily 3-to-1 cash on hand right now. Giuliani spent a tremendous amount of money and time prospecting for both anti-Hillary money and money for a Senate candidate in New York to be a Republican. He's found all those people. He's done the expensive part. Now you're in a situation where Lazio can turn around with those lists and raise money very rapidly, very economically. He's likely to be at a par with her financially by the July filings.
By the July filings, which means in a month he can catch up with her.
It's conceivable.
Is it even possible to write the fundraising letters,
I'm not
put the
sure it'll
stamps
happen.
on the
I'm not
mail,
sure it'll
and get
happen
it
that-
back within
I'm not sure it'll happen that quickly, but I'm not sure it's that
Absolutely.
important. I think eventually both candidates will have enough money to get their message out.
Right, but okay,
Once
which
you
brings
get
me
above
back.
$25 million, the extra amount of
the
money
fine,
doesn't
but-
make that much.
from the state
But gentlemen,
committee of the National
that
Party.
brings me back to my real question, which is here and now, in this period when he doesn't have all that much money on hand, and he is kind of this unknown quantity, and people are trying to either understand him or she's trying to already define him as like a bad guy, what should he do now?
You got to keep using the
gets a
free
lot of free
media
press.
like he's been doing.
Right.
He's doing a stunning job. Murphy's traveling him around the state. They're getting free media.
And does
they
he-
do all the talk shows? You know, it's Hillary Clinton has been afraid to do the Sunday morning talk shows and the other news programs. She isn't really allowing a lot of interviews with reporters, with the senior reporters. She's comfortable doing small town reporters, but she's not willing to really let the press corps have at her.
She has not appeared on Inside City Hall, for instance.
Lazio was very much willing to do that, and he handled himself incredibly well for a freshman in a Senate race. He's just out here for a week, and he's already proving himself to be a more seasoned candidate.
And you can do buys outside the New York media market that aren't going to cost you a fortune.
Okay.
So he can beat
I
on some
also
of the
think,
smaller
it's,
markets pretty easily.
well, it's nice to talk about the election now. I'll go back to what I was saying to people last summer and fall when they were then electing Rudy and saying Hillary wasn't going to run. It's still really early. I mean, at this point, people were saying that Chuck Schumer was not going to would come in third in the Democratic primary, let alone win the election.
Can I cast some doubt on that assertion? It is now when he is again an untested quantity. It won't be long before people start to make up their minds about
Well,
it.
that's why it's important that he
isn't it important right now that he write on that blank slate?
Obviously, he is writing on that blank slate, and they are responding.
And I
because
think
he's already tied
and
with
this is
Hillary.
not-
And
this is not always-
let me say one other thing. You talked about a convention bounce, that this was just a bounce. His convention's next week.
Well, I meant
and,
that
and the Democrats had the unenviable situation where they went into their convention with Cuomo and McCall fighting. Then they had Hillary do her presentation, get her coronation, and then they came out of the convention with a fight among Assembly Democrats for the leadership in the Assembly, for the Speaker position. You're not going to see that on the Republican side. You're going to see Lazio rolled out very expertly between now and the convention.
Joe, you're leaving
And
out
he's
the-
going to get a real convention
You're leaving
bounce.
out the thing that really stopped the Democrats under the convention bounce was Rudy's announcement. That's what stepped on any story they had.
You don't get-
Do people
yeah.
actually get
Well, the
convention
Republicans
bounces
aren't
Not in
gonna have
state
any
No, I
politics.
agree.
in state politics, which aren't heavily
I meant
televised?
convention bounce figuratively in the sense of what a national
Right.
candidate would have
I
caucused
understood
got in
that.
But I
88.
think we all agree that
What's
what
going to happen
Lazio-
May 30th
what-
on the
what
Republican side
Lazio
is
should
not
be
going to
doing-
propel
If
him
you
upwards in the
If you
polls.
think Lazio did good this week, wait till you see next week.
Joe Mercurio is impressed by Rick Lazio.
But I think what
Let's-
Lazio should be doing, I think we all agree, is trying to get a positive message out while he has his free, while he's
Okay.
getting
George
another
Arch.
week or two of free media.
George Arch, let's now talk about this upstate downstate thing.
Okay.
It's supposedly it now returns to what it's supposed to be between a
traditional
Democrat and a Republican. But Hillary Clinton, in running against Giuliani in that heretofore unorthodox campaign, had gone upstate, visited every single county up there, tried to make inroads, apparently did make inroads. So now that Giuliani's gone, Lazio stands up there, goes back upstate and says, look, I'm the Republican, I'm the guy, you're supposed to vote for Republicans. What happens?
I think you have a united Republican Party now for the first time. And I think the Pataki people are all behind Lazio. Obviously, they had put him out there initially, for Senate.
But what about all those upstate residents who are thinking, oh, well, she came to my town.
Well, I think she's very charming. She's a great campaigner. But he's going to go up there. They're going to see him. He's very charming. They're traditionally Republican. And in the end, I believe she's going to have a tough time up there. The numbers are not going to be the same.
Rudy
And he's gonna have
Giuliani
a tougher time
complained,
in the
and I
city.
think justifiably, that Hillary, well, he couldn't go to some places upstate because he had a job as mayor, and she's only job as being a candidate. That's still true, and she will be able to spend more time upstate and in the suburbs in Lazio because he's not going to want to miss too many votes in Washington because he doesn't want to be attacked for
But the flip side of that-
absenteeism.
The flip side of that is that Lazio's not going to be as strong in the city as Giuliani was. Now, Giuliani, towards the end of his Senate campaign, was, the curve had been downward over the last several months. But anything can happen in New York, and chances are that when all is said and done, Giuliani would have had a good shot at getting between over 35%, in which case he was going to be almost impossible to beat in this election. Lazio, it's not going to be so easy. There's no reason for people who are not traditional Republicans to vote for this guy. You can't go to places like the Upper West on the Upper East Side and get 42% of the vote like Giuliani might have.
He's likely,
going to get
however, to get twice what D'Amato got in the city.
We are out of time.
No.
Thank you all very much. It is time for a break. Stay with us.
But